No one knows the shadow world of UFO government conspiracies better than Harlan. Not now.
Whitley Strieber's name hangs between serious literature and late-night conspiracy chat. He wrote novels and about the uncanny, and in 1985, he reported an encounter that kicked off a long public conversation about what happens when sleep, memory, and identity collide with images you can't ignore. His 1987 book Communion brought that night to a big audience and did more than sell copies. It shifted the debate from "Did visitors actually arrive?" to "How do extraordinary experiences become part of culture?"
This is Whitley Strieber. I wish to warn you, so there is very frightening screaming. It should not be listened to by little children.
You have to understand that they are here.
I saw something that looked like it had a hood on it. And I don't want it to be there.
I don't know what it is either, Daddy.
Oh, my God. Awful. Oh, God, that's awful.
Before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let's go explore Whitley Strieber's terrifying story, Communion. The December night and the immediate aftermath. The reported incident reads like a sleep clinic note crossed with Gothic memoir on a cold December night in 1985 at his upstate New York cabin. Strieber said he woke to paralysis, hyper-clear perception, and the impression of being in the presence of small humanoid figures with big heads and dark eyes. Those images, familiar now from countless pop culture riffs, appeared in his sketches and in the hypnotic regression transcripts he later published. The episodes, he claimed, repeated over weeks and months and left him with a sense of being observed, handled, and sometimes communicated with in ways that bypass ordinary language. When Communion hit the shelves, it combined memoir, sketches, hypnosis sessions, and philosophical musings. The package was combustible. Readers either felt seen by his candor or enraged by what they took to be a mix of fantasy and gullibility. The book vaulted him out of the niche and into mainstream debate.
One of them, they made noises. There was noise downstairs. And I woke up and saw one of them standing in the doorway of the bedroom. I became terribly nervous.
You have to understand that they are here.
It was embraced as testimony by some, ridiculed by others, and from the looks of it, Christopher Walken didn't take the role seriously enough, or he was either coked out of his mind. It was the 80s after all.
Get up! I'm cooking. I'm on a roll. What's the matter with you?
Polarized responses. People split into two camps over Strieber's account. On one side were other experiencers, UFO researchers, and sympathetic readers who treated Communion as both a model and a validation. They pointed to similarities across cases: the small bodies, big heads, and the emotional fallout witnesses reported. These advocates argued that the patterning and depth of reports suggested something more than ordinary dream phenomena. They used words like consistency and continuity, as if assembling an academic case. On the other side were psychologists, neurologists, and skeptical journalists who framed the core features of Strieber's experience in clinical terms. Sleep paralysis brings temporary immobility and intense hallucinations. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic states spill dreamlike images into waking life, and even hypnosis, useful in therapy, can lead to made-up memories. Critics argued that cultural templates and story expectations shape what people remember, and that hypnotic regression is dangerously close to filling gaps with suggestion. Both camps have passionate, sometimes funny defenders. One side clings to cross-case patterns like priceless artifacts. The other waves lab gear and careful methods around like a moral duty. Strieber's evolving interpretation. Unlike someone who plants a flag and refuses to budge, Strieber's public trajectory shows ambivalence and intellectual curiosity. He continued to undergo therapy, to pursue hypnotic regression, and to record and analyze accounts. He admitted that sleep, dissociation, and memory processes might be implicated, yet he also pointed to puzzling consistencies and transformative impacts that, he argued, resist simple psychological reduction. Rather than settle on a single explanatory box, he assembled a buffet of frames. Psychological and neurological models shared table space with spiritual and metaphysical accounts. Hybrid theories about interdimensional intelligences got their moment, and cultural analyses of how societies make meaning of anomalous events rounded out the menu. Think of it as scholarly eclecticism, seasoned with a fair amount of existential seasoning. This mix made him maddening to hardliners and interesting to those who prefer nuance over binary solutions. In 1995, Strieber and his wife set up the Communion Foundation, turning what had been a loose, grassroots scene into something more official. The foundation aimed to support experiencers, collect testimonies, and promote research. With conferences, workshops, publications, and interviews, it created a public space where people could share reports without being immediately mocked. The focus shifted. It wasn't just about whether visitors literally came from outer space, but about how these episodes affect people's lives, identities, and communities. Strieber moved from lone witness to advocate and community organizer. The foundation helped normalize talking about experiences many had kept secret and pushed for more serious attention from medicine and academia. Some praised it for offering community support. Others accused it of institutionalizing a disputed set of claims. Either way, it changed how these reports circulate. Cultural colonialism. Hypothesis, one of Strieber's most provocative interpretive moves, reframes the visitor's objectives not as a crude program of biological sampling, but as a subtler campaign to appropriate and reshape human meanings, rituals, and identities.
The second reason is deeper. It goes back to ontological shock, and it has to do with cultural colonization. When Europeans developed the ocean-capable sailing vessels, they sailed out across the world with superior technology, but not necessarily a superior culture. They destroyed numerous civilizations by relentlessly colonizing them culturally, theorizing that if aliens were to come here, they would keep themselves secret, because the only things they would want here were things that would be new to them. And as soon as they revealed themselves, we would refocus our entire culture toward them, and that would end it. And so if the second reason for the secrecy is that they want to learn from us things that are new to them.
In his vocabulary, the visitors are less like external biologists and more like cultural tourists with a mission. Why this frame, he asked. Why do so many reports center on intimate settings, reproductive images, symbolic gestures, and fragmentary, dream-like communication? Why do the most persistent effects tend to be shifts in belief, priorities, and social ties rather than obvious physical artifacts? Cultural colonialism in his hands denotes interventions that aim to occupy the conceptual spaces where humans construct identity and social memory, by seeding motifs into dreams, by nudging rituals, and by leaving ambiguous communications that invite reinterpretation. The visitors might be reshaping the stories we tell about ourselves. It is a theory that makes the phenomenon less about biology and more about narrative power. It is also a deliciously unnerving thought. Imagine the visitors as terrible cultural tourists who rearrange your museum labels while you are asleep. Examples that make the cultural colonialism framing tempting include repeated attention to private and symbolic aspects of life, reports that center on reproductive images and rituals, the recurring appearance of certain motifs across different witnesses, and communications that arrive as metaphor or mythic fragment rather than clear propositional language. These patterns fit better with a claim about meaning-making than they do with a neat physical science model. Critics of the idea will say it is speculative and unfalsifiable. Supporters will say it captures a dimension that strictly biological frameworks miss. Either way, it foregrounds the role of narrative and cultural transmission in anomalous experience. Implications: if we take the cultural colonialism hypothesis seriously, it has consequences for how we study and respond to contact phenomena. Methodologically, researchers must move beyond a sole focus on physical traces and include qualitative analysis of narrative structure, comparative mythology, and media transmission. The archive of stories becomes data. Therapy must address trauma and memory, while also helping people reconstruct coherent life narratives. When their sense of self has been rattled, support looks less like forensic lab work and more like narrative repair. Socially, the hypothesis raises questions about vulnerability and institutional mediation. Who is most susceptible to influence? How do educational and religious institutions buffer or amplify cultural pressure? And what forms of cultural resilience can be developed? Philosophically, it forces us to revisit distinctions between human and non-human agency, to ask what counts as culture and who may participate in shaping it. The idea unsettles comfortable categories. It also opens intriguing avenues for interdisciplinary research. Continuing debate and legacy, for some, Strieber is a foundational figure who helped validate reporting and create spaces for community and healing. His willingness to speak candidly about fear, shame, and confusion opened doors for others. To skeptics and many scientists, he remains a controversial and disputed figure whose claims are better explained by sleep phenomena, fantasy, or social contagion. His cultural colonialism proposal is dismissed by some as imaginative but untestable storytelling. Despite the disagreements, his impact on how anomalous contact is discussed is undeniable. He nudged the conversation from a single question. Did they arrive to a richer set of questions about how extraordinary experiences get woven into narratives, identities, and cultures? Historians, anthropologists, and psychologists now find in his case a fruitful crossroads for study. Future writers and conspiracy memoirists will have him to thank or blame, depending on taste. But I personally believe in his story, but that's just my opinion. Conclusion: Whitley Strieber's 1985 encounter and the complex body of work that followed make for a story that resists tidy categorization. It is equal parts memoir, provocation, research prompt, and cultural mirror. Whether you read his reports as literal meetings with non-human intelligences, as windows into psychological and spiritual transformation, or as artifacts of cultural storytelling, they force us to reckon with how we interpret the strange, the traumatic, and the ineffable. His turn toward cultural colonialism reframes the phenomenon as less about biology and more about narrative influence, a move that complicates simple answers and invites interdisciplinary attention. So what do you think of Whitley's encounter? Was it a genuine intruder into human life, a neurocognitive glitch dressed in myth, or an early example of a story that learned how to remake our cultural furniture? Leave your thoughts below, and remember to subscribe to our channel for more videos that probe the darker and stranger corners of human experience. We promise curiosity, a dash of cynicism, and the occasional comforting cup of rhetorical tea. Plus, your home's poltergeist will thank you.